Good evening, everyone. I'll give folks just another minute to join us and we will get started. All right. Well, welcome again to the next Tiger Talk in our Tiger Talk Parent and Family Webinar series. My name is Casey Ford, and I serve as director in the Gantt Center for Student Experience, where a large part of my role is supporting your experience as a parent, family member, or supporter of our incoming students. And so we do that through a number of ways here at Clemson. Perhaps you have been able to come to campus or will come to campus for our Ready, Set, Roar in-person orientation sessions. Maybe you've had a chance to look at the guest version of the virtual orientation platform. Got some content for you all on our family portal, which we'll chat more about here in a few minutes. But we also do that through this series. So we know that you likely are coming in with a lot of specific questions that can be best answered by some specific campus partners when we've got some in-depth kind of FaceTime set up for you all to do. And so that is our intent through this series. And this year we are happy to have a new session for our military-connected students and families, which is where we will be spending some time discussing tonight. A couple quick notes before we jump into our content here. We will, in a second, give the rest of our panelists a chance to introduce themselves to you all, and then they will share their content with you throughout the presentation. We will wrap up with some closing remarks and final reminders there at the end. I mentioned the Q&A part of the presentation, so you will note that on your Zoom webinar toolbar, that is one of the tools that you see available to you. We would ask that you submit questions that you have as we're going along through the Q&A toolbar specifically. We don't have a great way to use the hand raise feature in the webinar environment. And if you submit questions to that Q&A button, that allows all of us as panelists to see those and tag team our answering of those questions. You'll also note that audio and video has been muted, so the panelists are the folks that you see in our little Zoom squares. We just want to make sure that they have the stage, so to speak, as we go throughout the evening. And then a couple final notes. One, you will notice that this session is being recorded. So if there is something that comes up later that you want to check back on, or if you know of folks who weren't able to make it tonight, we'll chat through the specifics of this many times, but just know that this session will be recorded, uploaded on the Clemson Family Programs YouTube page, and then sent through the Clemson Parent and Family Experience portal. Final note about your toolbar, I mentioned using that question and answer button to submit questions. We actually will use the chat on our end to share out any resources or links that go along with the content that we're sharing. And we've got a form in the chat for you already. If you will please do us a favor, go ahead and click on that link and fill out that form. That will assist us in the rest of tonight's presentation. Okay, at this point, I will transition to our presenters.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, can another panelist give me a thumbs up? Am I coming through loud and clear? Excellent. We're going to introduce ourselves in just one second, but kind of wanted to start out by letting you know that we're really excited to speak to you tonight about the support and the programs we have at Clemson for military connected students. The first thing that, besides all those fancy awards there, which we are very proud of, we just would like everyone to know that there are actually two offices at Clemson that support military connected students 100% of the time, the Office of Military and Veteran Engagement and the VA Educational Benefits Office. So, all right. I am Emily DeBruzzi. I'm the Director for Military and Veteran Engagement. I am a Navy veteran. I served for 10 years as a Korean translator. I am a Navy spouse. My husband retired after 21 years, and you can see that I had a lot of spouse time put in. And then my oldest son is also serving in the Navy. So I like to say I'm a triple threat, but certainly support all branches here at Clemson. And I do have 8 years of experience in military programs in higher ed at two state universities. I've been at Clemson for about 4.5 years now. And hopefully, you will all get to know me better very soon. But I would consider myself a very passionate advocate for service members, veterans, military children, military spouses, survivors, and ROTC cadets. And that's who we consider military connected.
Hi, everybody. I'm not Amanda Kaiser. She's much better looking than I am. My name is Scott Cook. I am the Assistant Director with the Office of Military and Veteran Engagement, Emily's right-hand man, so to speak. I retired about 6 years ago from the Army and Army National Guard after 31 years of service. The old saying is, I didn't start at Clemson, but I got here as soon as I could. I like to joke that I'm in my junior year here, but in reality, I'm actually starting in the fall as a master's degree student. So I will also be a student here. I absolutely love it here. And kind of like, to echo what Emily talked about, it's really our pleasure and just makes our day to assist your families and the other military connected students. You're muted, Joy.
Goofy. Hi, I'm Joy McJunkins. Sorry about that. I am the VA Education Benefits Coordinator here at Clemson, and I am also a veteran spouse and mother of a veteran and have over 20 years in higher education. It is my desire to make sure that you, if you are using federal VA benefits, that you get all the help you need to make sure that you can utilize that to the fullest. And that's what we're here to do, along with military and veteran engagement. We're a great team, and we're looking forward to working with you guys this year.
All
So
right.
tonight, oops, sorry,
Go ahead.
Scott. Over to you.
Okay. So thank you, Emily. So just a quick breakdown of what we'll be talking about specifically. We've got a little welcome to Clemson. We'll talk about what our office, M&VE, does. Then we'll talk about the benefits, and then we'll talk about some other stuff here. So nice, quick, and right to the point. All right. So you can see here on this graph, this is as of spring of this year. And Emily had mentioned those, some of the differences. You've got service members who are those who are in the armed forces, National Guard, reserves, veterans who have already served, of course, our military spouses, and our military children who are children of. We also talk about and work with our ROTC cadets, especially when they hit their third and fourth years. But honestly, anybody who's in their program, we welcome them and support them as best we can. And obviously, we like to take special care of our Gold Star family members. They're near and dear to us. As you can see on the chart, that was at 2681. And right now, we're on track to break 3,000 with the incoming class. That's going to put us north of 10% of our student population will be military connected. So we're extremely excited and happy to see that. All right. So some of the unique challenges, obviously, you've got transition to college. Well, everybody has that. I mean, your family members that come here, they're going to have that transition. But our veterans tend to also have that, but then they're also transitioning into the civilian world. And, being around, lots of other students who are, in some cases, like when I went back to school, they're our children's age. I actually took a class with my son when I went back and finished my degree. And then there's that balancing the school and work life, and then, of course, navigating VA benefits, which is always an ongoing thing because, VA. All right, so here's a quick group picture of us. So you've got Jimmy Molinax there on the left-hand side. He's Emily and I's boss. He's the executive director of military affairs. Then, of course, you have Amanda, which you've already seen Emily and I. Amanda is our student success coordinator. So she's fantastic at putting together our tutoring program. Like I said, Clemson obviously has the Academic Success Center, but we tend to be able to tailor it a little bit more to especially our military connected students, because imagine we've had students that they've been out away from high school for 10, 20 years, and then they decide to come to Clemson to be engineers, and they get hit in the face with calculus. And that's the first time they've touched math in that long. So that's just one of the things that we offer. Then you've got Joe Walker, who is our admin coordinator extraordinaire. She makes things every run, behind the scenes. And then down below, you've got Thomas Horton, who's one of our Skill Bridge interns, who's working with Joy's office. And then Joy, of course, introduced herself there in the VA benefits coordinator. And then we have Timothy Conrad, who's one of our partners from Upstate Warrior Solution. One of the things you may not realize about the upstate of South Carolina is we have the third highest veteran population in the state. And that is important in the fact that there is no base nearby. So you figure, in Columbia obviously has like Fort Jackson, Shaw. The coast has Charleston and Parris Island and Beaufort. But we don't have anything. So Upstate Warrior Solution is our local nonprofit that helps fill those gaps. And Tim works with us on a regular basis, actually in our spaces. He's a fantastic guy. So we've got a great team that can not only support ourselves, but also specifically, your students. All right, just a little hit on our mission, as you can see there, to serve and support the military connected community through engagement, enrichment, empowerment. We like to say from admissions to alumni and everything in between, as you see there. So because all of us in our program have been some way, shape connected to the military, we understand that. And a lot of us are also have been adult learners. We've gone back to college. And so we also understand what it feels like to be a veteran. And I like to say nobody understands the military life like those of us who have lived it, whether our parents have lived it, our spouses have lived it, or we've put it on everybody else. So when your students come here, they already have that built-in, ready-made family that we all understand, we all get each other because we've all been there. We can help you here. That's one of the things that we like to say. As you see the little word cloud of all the stuff that we do offer. Another thing is I like to say is we might not have the answer, but we'll find out who does. And the other thing that's unique about us is when we have a student that has an issue or a question, we don't just go over there. We do our best to do like a handoff, whether it's through email or physically taking them over and introducing, but we don't just pass them off and forget about them. We follow up regularly. Every time we see them, I'm like, hey, how's that thing working out? Did you get the help you needed? And if not, then we follow up with those individuals who are there to help them. All right, and so for our veterans, we also offer, and current service members, we'll also offer the Joint Services transcript. So that's a unique way for our veterans and service members to get credit for their past experiences and the classes that they've taken. And we're making great progress on that. As of course, like anything else, you always got a little hiccups there and there, but we've got a great support group on campus, and that's just one of the things we can do to help our students out. I mentioned this earlier, academic help. You can see this is just an example there on the left in the graphic. statistics, calculus, business calc, um, chemistry, writing, economics. So it's just some of the things that we do. And the business calc, we like to point out the fact that um, she actually wrote the textbook that our students use. So I mean, we're definitely going for the subject matter experts as it was. So, but we offer these things at no cost for your students. They can come in and get it's a little bit more of that hands-on, one-on-one stuff. And at the beginning of the semester, we'll post the times, and then even most of our tutors can also be available online as well. And now I'm going to pass off to the veteran benefits stuff.
Thanks, Scott. So again, kind of just wanted to reiterate that there are 2 offices that serve military-connected students at Clemson, and we'll take just a moment to talk about the VA Educational Benefits Office. Their physical home is in Sykes Hall, and they fall under the Registrar's Office in the Division of Records and Registration. So we kind of ended spring semester with about 1,300 students using VA educational benefits at Clemson. We're probably looking at 1,300 to 1,500 for future semesters. And again, Joy's on the call tonight. She is our lead VA school certifying official. We do have typically 2 school certifying officials full-time. Unfortunately, Brian has just departed us for another amazing adventure helping veterans in the local community, but we'll be looking to fill a position here shortly. And in the meantime, I also help out as an alternate VA school certifying official, a little bit more on the questions and answers side. Joy is the expert doing all the hard work behind the scenes, sending off those certifications. But any of us are available to guide benefit setup, interpret eligibility, help out, answer questions. So please do reach out if there's something that we can help with, and we'll go over a bit more tonight. This graphic here in the middle of the slide is what we like to refer to as the postcard. It's sort of like a little one-pager, and if you see us in person or come to a Ready, Set, Roar orientation, we'll be sure to be handing these out physical copies, but really just a consolidation of all of the information that you need to know to get your benefits set up if you plan to use a federal VA educational benefit. In the middle there, under that purple bar, there's sort of a "you must first," and that refers to the student and, obviously with support with the family. But students must email or upload a copy of the certificate of eligibility showing the benefit authorization from the VA to Clemson's VA benefits office. And then every semester, this is the really important part, the student who wants to use benefits must submit Clemson's benefits request form. So when we email this postcard out, there's a link there and you can access the benefits request form, but it is also online on the VA Educational Benefits Office website. There's a recreated chart that looks just like this postcard with the "you must do" and "then we do." And then the third thing is you have to be registered for your courses. If you're not registered for courses, there isn't anything for the VA Educational Benefits Office to certify to the VA. And then the process as it stands on our side is the VA Educational Benefits Office does look at the courses you're registered for and compares that to what's required in your academic program using the DegreeWorks tool for undergraduates and a plan of study or the curriculum for graduate students. And then the last step is the VA office submits the term certification to the federal VA. Over there on the right-hand side of this slide, that important reminder, we can only certify the coursework that does apply to the program. So if you sign up for something because it looks really fun and you just want to take it, or it's outside of the curriculum, or it's a repeat that you already have credit for, the VA Educational Benefits Office is not going to be able to certify that course. If we see that when we're doing a review, you will receive an email notification that gives you more instructions and information about really talking to your academic advisor, making sure you need that course, and any follow-up if you are trying to fix what appears to maybe be an issue, and you should be able to take that course in your academic program. Um, it's really a good habit to get into if you are using VA educational benefits to always do your Clemson benefit request form right around the same time you register for classes. That way you'll be in the queue for VA certification. And this is a lot of words, but really the most important thing over on the left-hand side, two important terms that we'd like to talk about tonight. Term certification is what Clemson submits to the VA each semester. And so that's just basically Clemson's VA Educational Benefits Office certifying the courses you're registered in that are all countable hours for that student's term. So again, even if you're enrolled in 15 hours, but 3 of those hours aren't counting toward the degree program, then the certification would just be submitted for the 12 hours that do meet the degree requirements. Um, and then enrollment verification is another very important term, and that is one you want to become very, very familiar with, because if students do not enroll or do not verify their enrollment, then they will not get paid, and that's the important step. So, ideally, the automated process is that the VA will send a text message to the cell phone number on the student's VA record that you all set up when you apply to use benefits. And so the student will just have to reply to that text message. If there's no text number on file, or the student doesn't reply, then the VA will send an email and you can reply to the email. Again, there's more information on va.gov about this process, enrollment verification, but it is required for the certification. And this is the slide most people are pretty excited to see. We've kind of spelled out there with a nice highlighted disclaimer that this could change at any time. We are not the VA, and so these are current pay rates just ahead of this session that are published at va.gov for the different chapters of benefits. And I did glance at the form that some of y'all filled out at the beginning of this session. It looks like we have a good mix of chapter 33 and chapter 35 recipients on the call with some Fry scholarship as well. So over on the right-hand side there, you'll see chapter 33 at Clemson provides tuition and fees, a monthly housing allowance around $18.84 a month for every full month that students are enrolled, which is really important, and a book stipend. And then chapter 35 is just one monthly payment. And technically right now the VA's website says $15.36 a month for our location, but it does appear that that amount's a little bit higher. Our students are getting paid about $15.85 a month right now. I think they're just a little behind in updating their calculator. For chapter 35, that is one monthly payment paid personally to whatever account you set up when you requested to use benefits. That federal chapter 35 does not come through the university. So that is a major difference between chapter 33 and 35. In chapter 35, you are required to pay tuition and fees. There is also a state benefit, and we'll talk a little more about it later. It is not a federal VA benefit, but a state benefit if the veteran is the resident of South Carolina and they have 100% P&T rating or a Purple Heart. This can be used with Chapter 35, and it's often combined to give both a tuition and fees side of a benefit with the federal Chapter 35, which is that personal payment. I know that was a lot of information, and we'll certainly be taking questions about benefit types and what's covered and what's not, but I think it's a good starting point. Same information as was on the previous slide, just a little bit of a chart view here, which my brain likes to see to organize information. So again, chapter 33 across the top there, sort of that golden ticket of benefits. It is the most beneficial of all. And you can see that that does pay the tuition and fees, housing allowance, and book stipend, whereas the Chapter 35 that others said they are using is the monthly stipend. So a lot of times we get a ton of questions about in-state versus out-of-state. So a couple of key points here. No one on this call is a decision maker in terms of residency, first and foremost, and we do follow South Carolina laws and regulations. So the best place for you to look for more information is on Clemson's residency website. And then for our military children, typically 99% of the time, military children are dependent students, and so parents' residency is what determines this. You can email any questions directly to the residency office within financial aid. And I do want to talk very briefly about military residency, which is sort of its own separate category. And if parents or the students themselves are active duty or spouses stationed in South Carolina, then you can apply for military residency with a copy of those orders, and that stays on the student's record for the duration of their time at Clemson, even if the service member, spouse, or parent takes orders somewhere else. So if that applies to you, even if you plan to use a benefit, please do go ahead and apply for military residency because it'll just give you extra protections. And then active duty stationed outside of South Carolina and those dependents may also qualify if, under military residency, if the South Carolina resident has maintained that South Carolina home of record and has tax record of that. So again, a couple of different options spelled out very, very much in detail on the residency website. But really, the question as it relates to benefits is if I use my benefit, do I get the in state tuition rate? And the answer is not cut or dry yes or no. So that's when the Federal Choice Act comes into play. So Clemson does follow the Federal Choice Act, it's federal law. Students who use a federal VA educational benefit and are living in South Carolina while attending Clemson, even if in a dorm or a temporary apartment for students, are eligible for the Choice Act waiver, which the Choice Act exemption on your bill does subtract out the out of state differential. So essentially, you still are charged out of state every time if you're out of state because you're out of state. But then while using the benefit and living in South Carolina while attending Clemson, you would be able to have the waiver placed on your account and the out-of-state portion subtracted off of your bill. And it will literally say Choice Act exemption on your bill. The biggest thing there, and that's bolded for you, how we know you're living in South Carolina, is you would have your local address on file in IROR. So make sure to keep that local address updated and check it every semester if you see an issue. It's new this semester. I don't think we have any Chapter 1606s on the call, but that's pretty cool that they now have access to this. If you are an out-of-state student and you choose not to use your VA benefits in a semester, then we would not be able to extend the Choice Act. And then if benefits run out, then in the semester the benefits run out, you keep the Choice Act on your account, but the next subsequent semester, when you're not using benefits, we can no longer apply it. So kind of circling back quick to that South Carolina tuition assistance for certain war veterans' children. That is a very long name for a really cool state benefit. It is for undergraduates only, and you do apply. Technically, the veteran applies at scdva.sc.gov under the Education tab. And again, eligibility is determined by the state, but as a general rule, children of veterans who are deceased in the line of duty, 100% disabled, or Purple Heart recipients are typically eligible for this benefit. and it is a tuition waiver. So at Clemson, tuition and fees are waived if you're eligible for this. So again, you would see that on your bill. Tuition and fees would be charged, and then this waiver would be applied. So that would be a credit on your bill. The residency office in financial aid processes this important benefit, not the VA Educational Benefits Office. They do the federal benefits. Residency does the state benefit. Once you apply and are awarded, you will get a letter letting you know. It's actually mostly email now, unless you select otherwise. And then the same time you get that email, Clemson's residency office automatically receives it from the state as well. So a good rule of thumb is if you've received notification that your application is approved, give it a week or so. And if you don't see it updated on your student bill, then you could reach out to the residency office. This can be used alone, and it can also be used with Chapter 35, which is pretty common. Technically, it can be used with Chapter 33, but it gets wonky. It's not really needed or recommended. So if you have questions about that, you could talk to Joy or one of the other benefits staff. I think we'll go ahead and skip this tonight because as far as I saw, Scott, Joy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we probably had any federal TA or CAP folks on the call tonight, just based on responses. So billing, this is an important slide. What we want you to know first and foremost is that once you do that Clemson benefit request form every semester, then sort of on the back end of the Clemson bill, your account is coded in the system. So you don't have to be fully certified for your Clemson bill to reflect the correct information. That is done when your benefit request form is processed by the VA Educational Benefits Office. And then another really important thing to keep in mind is that each chapter of benefits is different and not all appear on the bill. So if you have a question, definitely reach out. We're happy to help look at your bill with you and make sure that everything looks correct on our end. And then as far as the actual VA certification, that is a manual process. And if you remember earlier, we talked about 13 to 1,500 students a semester getting certified. So there is a queue. If you're at the top of the queue, that could be at one point in time. And by the time we get through all of those students, it could be 4 to 6 weeks later. So keep in mind, the sooner you do that benefit request form during the registration window, the sooner you'll be certified. And then chapter 31 and 33, you will see an anticipated tuition and fees credit on your bill once the benefit request form is processed and everything is working in the system. Other chapters, you won't see your federal benefit on the tuition as far as tuition and fees on your bill. But remember, if you're out of state and using any benefit, you want to see that Choice Act exemption as a credit. That means we are exempting the out of state portion of your fees. And then just again, important note down there in red, chapter 30, chapter 35, and 1606. Those benefits do not pay through the university. That's a personal payment to you all, to your family, and so that does not appear on the bill. And then to take it even one step further, benefits are on the bill. They are not part of the financial aid package that you receive. So right now, bills have not run for fall. Nobody's seeing anything, and we'll kind of talk about those timelines on the next slide. So fall bills are set to run July 27th this year. That's simply because many students haven't signed up for their courses yet and housing assignments are not finalized. And so we really don't know what to charge you yet. So that date is really intentional. But that said, it does only leave about a 2-week period after the bills publish before they're due. So that's sort of why we want to take the time to go through what you might expect to see on the bill or not see so that you understand. Please do not miss the billing deadline. It is very bad to miss the billing deadline. that can result in real issues because that last bolded statement at the bottom of this slide is real and true. And if you ignore your bill and do nothing, all of your courses will be dropped for non-payment, which causes really big problems. So don't get to that point. Definitely have a plan now. Make sure that you kind of anticipate what you will be getting and what will come in. And then you can go ahead and sign up for a payment plan to cover anything that's outstanding ahead of your benefits. So students who are using a federal VA education benefit should have access to a VA payment plan in the regular payment plan section of signing up. And if you don't see that, it might be because your student has not yet done the Clemson benefit request form and that hasn't been processed. You can also reach out to the VA Educational Benefits Office if you have a question about the VA payment plan. Some general examples of charges that you are responsible for: tuition and fees, unless you're one of those two chapters mentioned there, or unless using that state tuition benefit. Housing is always something you're responsible for. Meal plan, parking, any extra things that are added to the bill are your responsibility. This is always a good time to say, too, the bill is due before anyone, any student, no matter when you did a benefit request form, would receive a personal payment. So the VA pays in arrears. The soonest any student for fall will see a partial payment will be on or around the first part of September for the 11 or 12 days in August that we're in class. That's a partial payment. It's not that 1536 or the 1800. It's about 1/3 of that for the first initial payment. And then the first full payment for a personal VA educational benefit is on or around October 1st for the month of September, which is a full month in class. Lots of helpful tools and resources because this was a lot of information, and we certainly do not expect anyone to remember every detail or know exactly how the process works after just one presentation. But the GI Bill comparison tool is the VA's tool online that you can Google and put in your specific information and see what the VA says you will expect to receive. And then for billing questions, Chapter 33 users, you get your own personal billing folks who help you out. There's a great Chapter 33 billing team, and that's their email and contact. And then for any other chapters, student bill questions at clemson.edu. And then great time to say that Clemson's VA Educational Benefits Office is not the federal VA, and we actually do not know when you will be paid your personal payment. So sometimes we may have to refer you to the VA's call center for specific information that's outside of what we can answer. I think we talked a lot about these already, but the when will I be paid? Typically on or around the first of the month. And the payment is for the month prior. So the VA does pay in arrears. And then that highlighted very important statement there, do not forget to verify your enrollment, or it is possible you will not be paid or paid on time. In-state, out-of-state, I know we talked about Choice Act. You will know that you are in a good place as an out-of-state student using benefits when you see that Choice Act exemption, which is the subtraction of the out-of-state portion of tuition and fees. As far as scholarships go, the best source of information is always going to be financial aid. But if you have specific questions about how benefits and scholarships work together, we can answer those. It does depend. There are tons and tons of nuances. I see Joy being like, just like our other favorite question, study abroad. But we do really need to kind of look at the individual situation. But for Chapter 33 users, just know that you really only have to worry about the VA and your scholarship not working well together if you're a Chapter 33 user post 9/11 and you have a tuition only scholarship because the VA is a second payer. And so in that case, the scholarship really doesn't do a lot for you. It actually reduces what the VA pays Clemson for your tuition and fees. So sometimes students choose to save that scholarship if it's an option, or not even apply for a scholarship that's tuition only because it won't work well with your Chapter 33. For Chapter 35, you're wide open. Your payment does not come through Clemson, so you can apply for any scholarship you want, and those work really well together. And then, gosh, there's usually something else I want to say about that. Joy, did I miss anything?
The the fact that the Choice Act may bump out any out of state merit
Yes.
scholarships. So the out of state merit scholarships are there to help our out of state students with the out of state portion of your bill, because you're using the VA benefit and have Choice Act, which essentially waives the out of state portion of your bill. There is no need for the out of state merit scholarship.
Thank you, Joy. That was exactly what I always say there and like to talk about, because this might be the first time you're hearing it, and I'm sorry if that's a bad news bummer for you, but exactly like Joy said, if you did receive an out-of-state merit scholarship, that is to reduce out-of-state tuition and fees. And since you would not pay those as a VA educational benefit user, the university will take that money back and reallocate it to a different student and family, which most people are like, I'm fine with that. That makes sense. That's fair. But again, if you want to follow up on that or have additional questions, let us know. I will say if the student doesn't have enough federal benefit to last the whole time, you can email financial aid and let financial aid know, right now I don't need that out of state merit scholarship, but later if I run out of my benefit, I may need it. And they have been able to sometimes work with our families in that regard. So, yeah. That was certainly a lot, and we understand. So, we want to give some time for questions and leave you with just one last nugget of our best advice, which is read your emails from Military and Veteran Engagement, and more importantly, from the VA Educational Benefits Office if you're a benefits user. And please, please, please read our Paws and Stripes newsletter. All new students should be receiving it already. The June edition came out the first week of June, and parents, you all are more than welcome and invited to subscribe in on our website, and then you will receive it as well, because it is often that students wander into our resource center and they say, my mom or my dad read this in the newsletter and told me to come and see you. And we love that. That makes us happy. So thanks again for your time, and we'll take some questions, I think.
Yes, it looks like our fellow panelists have been hard at work getting some of these questions answered in the queue. So shout out to Joy and Scott there. I'm seeing maybe one more open question about, let's see, the bill in July. Are you able to see that one, Emily?
Yes, I am able to see that. So we have not seen, and Joy, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but we have not seen any delays with the state tuition waiver. They are processing those pretty much as quickly as they get them. If it's been longer than 30 days, definitely check in on the SCDVA website. There's a phone number and an email for direct contact about the state tuition waiver, and they are very, very, very responsive. If you don't get an answer, definitely let us know. We usually go right to the secretary's office and we can do an inquiry, and they're very friendly to us. So we never have to do that because they're responsive. So I would say hopefully if it's not been over 30 days, if you're asking that, and if it has been over 30 days, reach out directly to check on your family's application. I hope that helped.
Perfect. Thank you. And then another question, what is the biggest mistake or overlooked action that you generally see with first-year students?
Joy, I bet I can predict your answer. Do you want to take that one?
My guess is BRF.
Yeah.
Sorry, my mouse is being weird. Probably need to change batteries. I'm not seeing that question, so I think I'm having some difficulty with that. Can you
Okay.
repeat the question?
Absolutely. It says, what is the biggest mistake or overlooked action that you generally see with first-year students?
Definitely BRF. Yes, the benefit request form. It's a Clemson form. The other is not getting the COE into us or not even applying for the COE. So some students that receive transfer benefits from their parent believe that they're good to go when the parent gets a transfer letter that shows that those benefits have been transferred. The student actually has to apply to use the transferred benefits. So if you're in that category and your student has not applied to use the transfer benefits, then that is something that definitely needs to happen. They will not receive a COE until they have actually applied to use the benefit. And then, of course, the benefit request form is our form here at Clemson. The link is on our website, and the login information is your iRoar student portal login information. So I know a lot of parents will try to help the student out and may not have that information and are contacting us that the link is no good, and it's actually because you have to have the student's portal login information.
And Casey, can I quickly add, like from our side, so back to military and veteran engagement, not benefit side, I would say the biggest overlooked or missed opportunity would be engaging with us, would be especially Scott's shaking his head because he produces the newsletter every month, and every single month there are relevant and open scholarship opportunities, so free money. We
Yep.
hire about 12 to 15 student assistants a year across our, two offices here. And so there's part-time job opportunities, career initiatives, just all kinds of incredible programs, resources, and support for military connected students. And if the students aren't reading it or engaging, then it's we literally do not give away all the money we have annually. So
It's a great one. Scott, anything to add?
Um, Coffee. If your students like coffee, we have free so I didn't get a chance to mention this earlier, but if you think about, and most of you who are military veterans and stuff understand, we're like a USO. So our space in Hendricks and our space in Vickery, both lounges, it's like a USO. It's a place where students can come in between classes, hang out, drink some coffee. We have snacks, TVs, video games, all kinds of stuff that can come and just relax and just also be around other people, like who I said earlier, who get it. Um, and it's not Hickory, and I'm answering this live. Vickery, Vickery Hall, and Hendricks Student Center. Those are our two main spaces. But yeah, it's just honestly, it's like Emily said, if they don't come and come and visit, they're missing out on a lot of stuff, especially if you've got a student who's doing STEM. We've got two in Vickery. We have two very, very powerful computers that are specifically for our engineering and STEM students. They can pretty much handle whatever you can throw at them, because your students will find that the computer lab gets full, and we've got them. Come use them often. And we also have calculator rentals, so you can handle that. Again, all this stuff is free. Don't spend money on notebooks. Yes, they do sign in like a USO because we are a research institution. We like to track numbers. But honestly, yes, they just come in with their card or their phone. They can just tap in, swipe in, too easy. But yeah, please, please, please let them know to come see us. They won't regret it.
Awesome. I am not a military connected student or a family member, but I have been the benefit of the coffee pot in the military and veteran engagement space. So certainly would recommend. And as Scott shared, that is in the Hendrick Student Center where I would imagine your students will find themselves quite often. And so a really great place to stop by while they're in that space. All right, I think we have caught up with all of our questions here, both in the queue and out loud. So I will just leave us with a couple of reminders as we come to a close. I mentioned at the start that this session is being recorded. We will share that out in a couple days through the Clemson Parent and Family Experience portal. Would offer a plug in general for this portal as well. We really try to treat this as a hub for all family communication, any kind of university news, messages that we're getting. As staff members, we try to mirror what is important for you and your student through that portal. And then many of you, if you can, but you also are already likely in our 2026 parent and family orientation community on that portal. And so we treat that group of families really specifically in terms of tailored communication and information that has to do specifically with your students' transition. So we've been posting content and sending emails since late April, early May, and we'll continue to do that up through the first of the year. So would certainly recommend getting connected to that portal if you've not already, but also a reminder that that is where we will send out this recording. We also, I would offer our office's contact information in the chat as well. So cufamilies@clemson.edu if there's ever anything further that we can do for you. And then a reminder that we've got a handful of these Tiger Talk webinars coming up. So take a bit of a break here and then jump into our student involvement session there in early July, as well as a few final sessions. And then suddenly it will be August and you all will be here. So I would encourage you to join us. Again, thank you so much for your attendance tonight, and we will see you at the next session. Good evening and go Tigers.